After giving some presentations on the East Coast a while back, a couple of women approached me after two of the presentations that were nurses at children's gender clinic hospitals over on the East Coast. And they shared with me, one of them said, there's a big press conference at our hospital because they're doing these illegal procedures. We're getting protests. They said the director of this gender medical clinic at the hospital was outside with reporters live on television, and we're watching it, she said, as the nurses upstairs. And the director's out front saying, no, we don't perform these surgeries. And like, no, that's not even legal. We don't do those things. Meanwhile, the nurses are upstairs like, wait, like, what a minute. Like, I'm holding the medical chart of that kid that you did that surgery on yesterday. Fraud is going on. Illegal procedures are going on. Even the procedures that are legal aren't even ethical. So what do you do if you find yourself in a situation like this, where you're a medical professional and you know that these gender-affirming surgeries are actually mutilating children? These hormones that they're giving to kids causing little girls to go through menopause before they even have their driver's license. What do you do? What are your rights? How can you stand up and protect these kids and hopefully protect your job in the meantime? Today's episode is awesome. I filmed these little bumpers after the show to kind of get a feel for the guests. Today was amazing. This woman, Marcella Burke, is a managing partner in a law firm in Texas that's representing the only 3 cases in America right now of whistleblowers against hospitals. I mean, we're talking multi-billion-dollar lawsuits that are going down. She's representing these whistleblowers. There's victory going on. There's rights that belong not only to the victims that have gone through these things as the patients, but even to the workers there at the hospital who know the difference between right and wrong. And so the beauty is you've always known that God is on your side, but did you know the law is actually on your side as well? And so today, Marcella is going to give us a deep inside look at what is going on in these hospitals, the scandals, the fraud, the unbelievable stuff that's going on that we actually have not only the right to stop, but I believe the ethical obligation to stop. She's going to give you very concrete pointers on what you can do. If you're in this situation or you know someone who is, you know someone who's gone through some of these gender procedures and regrets the choice that they've made, what are your rights when it comes to informed consent, to information that you were not given about the impact that this would have on your life? And, you know, what may be due to you financially for the fact that this never should have been done to you in the first place. And so stay tuned. It's going to be an awesome presentation. I also, again, want to invite people who appreciate this program. If it's been a blessing to you, please consider joining our Patreon community. You just go to patreon.com/Jason Evert, and you can support us at $5 a month, $10 or whatever. And then we can take that and use it to support the family, the mission, and all that we're trying to do to change culture. So God's put it on your heart to support us there. Please go over to Patreon and check that out. Also, now we've got a couple of real exciting things coming up within the ministry. One, we have a new free training seminar that we're going to do for anybody who wants to tune in. It's going to be in the evening of September 26th. If you're a parent, priest, educator, young adult, anybody who wants to learn how can I address this whole gender subject, whether it's in a workplace environment, whether it's in a teacher-student relationship, parent-child, what should I say? What should I not say? If you're just concerned about the direction this culture is headed in general, tune into this. If you just go to chastity.com/training, you can sign up for this and then you'll get a notification when the course is going to happen. But it's going to be a free training session for about an hour. And then also it's going to be using that to launch a course that we're doing. It's a much more in-depth analysis of how you can learn to respond to this subject of gender dysphoria and gender theory with both charity and clarity. So just go to chastity.com/training to sign up for the training, chastity.com/courses if you want to sign up for that course and pre-register for when that's going to come out soon as well. But stay tuned. This podcast is, I believe, one of the most impactful ones we've ever recorded. And when you get finished watching, I think you'll know why. God bless. Marcel, thank you so much for coming on the program today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm curious, what on earth made you want to get involved in this type of very non-controversial subject in which everyone would want to be your friend? How on earth did you get involved in the legal battles regarding medical transitioning for minors? Give us a little backstory on that.
Well, I can relate a lot to my clients in that I found myself in this area and didn't want to be in the area and had to ask myself, would I rise to the occasion? And so I built a law firm. A number of us had left major global law firms and senior government positions to start a boutique commercial litigation firm. And pretty soon after opening our doors, we got a phone call about Dr. Eithan Haim's case, the whistleblower at Texas Children's. And I had delivered 2 of my 4 boys at this hospital. And I was horrified about what I had heard had been going on at the hospital. And then I was shocked to hear that Dr. Haim had received a target letter and that they were investigating him, the whistleblower, and not the hospital. And so I was just a lawyer who found myself immersed in the issue. And what I originally tried to do was find someone who would take the case, that my firm wouldn't take it, but surely I could help find somebody with expertise in the area. And although there was someone at my firm who was at Department of Justice and did do fraud and medical fraud and was actually highly qualified, I was calling around and it just became evident there's no one that could take the case that was qualified. And when I called my partner and told him about it, he said, we should do it. And so we decided we have our own firm and we can take the cases that we think need to be taken. And so we should rise to the occasion. So we've joined, I would say, our clients in this preposterous situation we've all found ourselves in to present the culture, present the truth and legal arguments and meet the culture where it is. So we stand side by side with our clients, just wanting to try to do the right thing at the right time.
Yeah, well, thank you for your courage. But to play the devil's advocate for just a moment, if someone says, well, why would you prevent, young people who are suffering tremendously from dysphoric feelings about their body from receiving this, critical life-saving intervention of medical transitioning that could give them hope and a new beginning? Like, why would you want to stand in the way of something that could provide them real lasting relief when nothing else has up to this point? What would you do with that objection that a lot of people in culture, I think, are going to throw into the way of those who are trying to protect these kids?
Sure. I mean, my lived experience has been with my clients and with detransitioners, one of whom it works at my law firm as a researcher.
Wow.
These are children and young adults who've been lied to and manipulated. Puberty is hard. Puberty is awkward. We are all learning as young people what it means to be human and what it means to be a male or a female. And it's a very difficult time. A lot of the children that are involved in this have a lot of mental health issues, a lot of suicidal tendencies, suicide attempts, a lot of sexual abuse in their homes or at schools. And there's a lot of just surrounding external issues going on that are leading to these confused feelings about their biological sex. And so to tell a child going through so much pain and suffering that by taking a pill, which is just a hormone, or to do some surgery will make all of those other problems go away is a lie. Yeah. And so the truth may hurt, but it never harms. And so you would tell the young person the truth, that you are a beautiful person. You're made in God's image, that you're going to get through this. Puberty is tough, and we can do this together. Yeah. And that's the truth. And the truth will get people, will make people free. And so, no, I mean, if someone wants to say that a pill is going to help a child in this situation, I'd say that's just a lie from the pit of hell. And that's not going to help this person. And that's exactly what we hear from our detransitioners. They've been abused, manipulated, lied to, many of them seduced online early as age 8, 9, 10. One of the women I work with, by the time she was 11, had been seduced online. Her parents were getting divorced. Her dad was not around. Her mom would do anything to sort of help her control her emotions. She was on hormones by the time I think she was 14. She had, by the time she was 19, decided she wanted surgery. And she was just down this path. And she had been affirmed, quote unquote, the entire time. The hormones have left her with a permanent beard. Her voice is permanently changed. Her body is permanently sterilized. And she got a double mastectomy. And the double mastectomy was botched. She almost died. And she woke up in the bed and realized all of this was a horrible mistake. And so she is a perfect example of someone who needed someone to listen to her during her parents' divorce, who needed an adult in the room to protect her from perverts and pedophiles on the internet that were lying to her about her body and seducing her in all sorts of ways. And so she's had to overcome not only her own physical issues, but also all the emotional abuse and suffering, not only from the abuse itself that she received, but the secondary abuse of telling adults and the adults not seeing what she's going through as abuse, but endorsing it. So there's just so many layers of confusion and lies that these young people go through. And so many have come out and have changed their minds, have identified with their natural sex, and are navigating life anew. And these are some of the best witnesses. I think about the pro-life movement, and, the victims of abortion are in heaven. But the victims of the transgender movement, to the extent they haven't taken their own life, which is a staggering statistic, a lot of them turn it around and they stop it and they speak against it. And it's actually a beautiful witness to life and to human sexuality that we get directly from the detransitioners themselves.
And what a beautiful point that the truth may hurt, but it'll never harm. I mean, this idea that so many kids are literally, well, puberty shouldn't be hard. I mean, your body changing, if that's rough for you, then, puberty's the problem. It's almost like the drug companies that want to treat periods like they're just so pesky. Like, who wants a period? Here, take all these drugs, then you won't have to deal with it. It's like, oh, wait a minute, maybe they serve a purpose for you. And so for those who've gone through the steps of transitioning and the anesthesia is worn off and maybe the bliss that they had, a few weeks that lasted or maybe even years or decades after the surgery is done. And they realize, well, I didn't really solve my problems. I just created additional ones. I just treated my body as this kind of false target of intervention because it's so hard to fight against anxiety and PTSD and autism and all these things. You're like shadow boxing your opponent. Whereas if like the body is the target of intervention, you can kind of feel like you're getting somewhere. Hey, I'm starting to look more masculine. I feel like I'm making progress. But once they realize that progress was more regress, and they regret these things, and they look at the scar tissue and the infertility and everything that follows, and their voice that won't go back to the norm, what recourse do they have? Because I've heard people say, well, look, you can't sue the doctor because it was legal. So, I mean, what are you going to do? You can write a blog about it and complain. But, what recourse do the kids have when they got, for example, like the girls that have gotten double mastectomies at Oakland's Children's Hospital at the age of 12, or if a girl's 16 and going through medical transitioning, or a boy? What recourse do these kids have? When do they come to their senses and realize like, wow, that was not helping me. They just collaborated with my mental illness instead of actually treating me. What recourse do those kids have?
Sure. Well, the primary duty of a doctor is to do no harm. And so if your doctor has harmed you, it depends on what state you live in, but there are malpractice laws, there's informed consent laws. And so those would be very relevant. And you'd want to look at what was it they told you about the potential harms for these interventions and what are the lasting effects. A lot of people have been told it's a pause, that you're pausing your puberty. Mm-hmm. And so you can take these hormone blockers, and that what the blockers are is typically it's an intravenous, it's a surgery. They put you on anesthesia. We've had cases where the family has said, take it out. The side effects are terrible. And the doctors refuse to take it out. They refuse to take it out. They want the child fully sterilized. And so then they'll take it out. So you have these terrible cases where the doctors refuse to reverse before it's too late. And they'll tell you it's a pause. And by the time the intervention, the course has run through, you've been sterilized, your voice has changed with the hormones or whatever. And they'll say, well, what we meant by pause was a metaphysical pause. And so now you can present as whatever sex you like. And so you're living whatever sex. It's all totally malleable and fluid, quote unquote. And they're like, well, when do I get my period back? Or if you're a young boy and you get the hormone blockers as an 11 to 13-year-old boy, your sex anatomy will never grow larger than it was at that age. So you could be 17 with the penis of an 11-year-old boy and you'd say, well, when am I going to get an erection? And well, it's a metaphysical pause. You're never going to actually be able to perform sexually or have a family or any of those things. But you can live your best life today as a man, if that's what you want. But no, you're never going to have the male anatomy of a grown man, of course. And so they've been lied to. There's also lots of lies about the side effects to the body. So when you block the hormones, something that's really interesting, is these hormone blockers, puberty blockers. They're surgical free chemical interventions. They have the same effect of a surgery called nullification. Nullification surgery is really horrific. It's when a surgeon takes a smooth, continuous skin to cover the abdomen to the groin. And it's created following a castration or what's called a vaginectomy. In other words, the genitalia are replaced by nothing. Nullification is the perfect symbol for this ideology behind the trans movement, because it's the pursuit of the Latin nullum, which means nothing, or relatedly, nihil, the root of the English word nihilistic or nihilism. Trans ideology is animated by this very profound nihilism that denies human nature and enables barbarism in the name of progress. And puberty blockers do the same thing. They're surgery-free chemical interventions with the same effect as the nullification: sterilization with system-wide hormonal failure. And so the puberty blocker medication comes the form of the monthly injections or these implants, and it simulates the activity of these hormones, and it shuts down the hypothalamus in your brain. And so if the doctors are not telling the children about the side effects of doing something like shutting down the hypothalamus, that's very relevant legally, because the hypothalamus is this almond-sized structure in your brain, and it's a primal structure that controls all the hormones in your body: your sexual development, your emotions, your fight or flight response, your bone development, your cardiovascular system. All of that is controlled. And so when you block the development of that part of your body, you're also blocking the bone structure growing. Your bones become brittle. We had a witness in one of our cases who was a detransitioner, and he dropped a water bottle on his foot, just a plain plastic water bottle, and he broke 8 bones in his foot. I mean, the brittle bones you have the rest of your life. I mean, there are so many side effects that have not been disclosed. So those are just sort of the type of things that you can look at. You can call a lawyer. You can see, is there medical malpractice coverage for this? Is there lack of conformed consent for this? And those are not actually the types of cases we've taken at our law firm. Our law firm has taken cases where there are employees at hospitals in states where this is illegal who have seen that it's still happening. And those are fraud cases by whistleblowers. And we can talk about that later. But in general, high level, the type of claim that a detransitioner would have would be malpractice and lack of informed consent.
Oh, wow. Well, let's dive into that for sure. Let's say we've got a nurse in a hospital, and they've been watching this stuff, and they got into medicine because they love people and they want to care for kids. And, they're seeing these kids getting put on Lupron and Supprelin and all this stuff. And, their conscience is gnawing at them, but they're like, wait a minute, but I've got a family to provide for. And if I speak up, I'm going to lose my job and I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. And they're going to legally go after me, in this hospital's, multi-billion-billion-dollar business. What chance do I have, little old me, of coming up against this entire system? And so they kind of muzzle themselves and just stay quiet and, or maybe try to transition into a different department within the hospital. What recourse do the nurses, the doctors, the medical professionals have out there that are afraid to come against this big bad giant of the pharmaceutical industry or just their hospital in general? Like, what can they actually do against this, and what should they do?
Sure. Well, I'll start by talking about some of the fears and anxieties that whistleblowers have, at least of those that we've spoken to. And I've shared these, right? My law firm took these cases, and we, as a group, as a partnership, and with our spouses, had a lot of the same concerns. One is fear of the government, fear of government prosecution. 2 of our clients have had the FBI at their home. One of them had the FBI threaten their physical safety. If you don't stop talking, we know people who want to harm you, and we're not going to protect you from them. We've had an FBI agent tell a client that we're going to make your life very difficult. I mean, this is very scary. So fear of the government is something that unfortunately citizens in our republic in 2024 face. They face fear of their government. Fear of being swatted, which is when someone will, act as if there's something happening in your home, and then call the SWAT, and then your home is raided in the middle of the night and you've got FBI in your home with a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
There's unfortunately numerous cases of people who've been shot by the FBI during a SWAT, even if it was just a fake call by a sort of a political. So fear of that, your children being harassed in public. And then, of course, for those, who don't work at law firms like the Burke Law Group, people who have fear of losing their job. For taking cases like this, or if you're a nurse or a doctor, that you would lose your job. And so those are all legitimate fears. But there's also fears that you would have for not speaking out. And one of those is the fear of the future of living in a country in which we allow these things to happen to our kids and we don't speak up. Or the fear of living in a country with a government who will coerce and imprison you for not going along with the preferred ideology. Or, as a Christian, the fear of abandoning God, who has invited you for some reason to cooperate in his work of redemption and salvation in this area, in our country, in this moment in history. And those are also fears. And so if you have an opportunity, you're seeing something at the hospital, it's illegal, and we can talk about what to look for and how to report it and all those things. But if you see something like that, to just take a step back and pause and see that God has tapped you on the shoulder to put you into this fight. And he doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Mm-hmm. And it's a high honor and a privilege to be someone that he's chosen to help defend all his innocent children who he loves so much. And so if you find yourself in a hospital or at a clinic and you see this is happening, there's lots of things you can do. We have different types of whistleblowers that have hired our law firm to help them. We've taken these cases across the country. We have a secular Jewish person who sees this just as an abomination to the practice of medicine. We have an evangelical Christian who sees this as an abomination and affront to God's creation, Genesis, and to our human dignity enumerated in the Bible and through church teaching. We have a whistleblower client who is a lesbian and who is married to a woman who presents as a man and who was involved in the industry for years and thought this was progress until she saw the damage being done to the children over the years. And then she spoke out. And so there's all types of people. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to be an evangelical or a Catholic to speak out, first of all. Any person of goodwill who sees these things happening at their clinic or their institution, they can speak up. One thing you can do is you can call a lawyer. And the first thing I would say is to call a lawyer. And you want to call a lawyer that's familiar with what's called the False Claims Act. And the biggest case that we have, the biggest type of case we see is in states where this is illegal, and sometimes even where it's legal. Medicaid does not cover these surgeries. TRICARE, the government's insurance, doesn't cover it. CHIPS, state insurance doesn't cover it. So what they'll do is, instead of coding under the gender ideology codes, which are the F64 codes if you're in the industry, they'll use other codes to get around the laws. So for example, if a boy or a girl, say a girl, I guess I'll use either. If a boy wants estrogen, okay, you would say, they have gender dysphoria, they code gender dysphoria, and then they would ask for estrogen. Well, if in your state, like Texas, it's illegal to prescribe these medicines, well, they might say, okay, we're going to put the sex of this boy in the chart as a female, and we're going to say this person has hypogonadism, and that they are deficient in the testosterone or whatever, and they're going to give the hormone based on a false representation of their biological sex and then a false diagnosis. So, of course, a girl, for example, doesn't have gonads. So if she's got hypogonad and is lacking testosterone, it's because she's healthy and doesn't need it. But if they register the incorrect biological sex and then they put this diagnosis, it's a fraudulent claim to Medicaid to pay for the medicine that's then being sent. So all that's kind of complicated, but for anyone in the industry who's listening, it might be straightforward. And so what you would do is you would talk to a lawyer who understands about false claims. We have plenty of experts at our firm and at other firms. There's across the country. And we would help you collect the evidence. There's very specific ways to collect the evidence. You want to be very careful to preserve patient protection information and data. And then you file a complaint, and it's anonymous. They're under seal. And you tell the government essentially that this is happening against the law. And then there's all these laws in place to protect you. The False Claims Act has an employment provision where they can't retaliate against you when you file the claim. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act can't discriminate against religion, people based on their religion. And if you do have a religious objection, you can tell your employer, I'd like to move and to make a religious accommodation. And they have to accommodate that. And they move you within the hospital out of that clinic into somewhere else that's not doing it, even pending an investigation of what you've said is there. But your job is protected. That's the way it should go. If you are retaliated against, if they do fire you, any of those things, well, the law is on your side. And so you, again, have a lawyer who can hopefully represent you and see that through. And so we've taken a number of cases with very brave whistleblowers where we do everything from their employment work, their False Claims Act work, and even white collar investigations. Because in Texas, one of our whistleblowers was indicted under 4 counts of felony HIPAA. It's an unprecedented case. It's a novel theory of HIPAA. The government has its facts completely wrong. They have the law wrong. But again, we see that as another act of intimidation. The process is the punishment. They want to discourage whistleblowers. And I think that, they're going to soon learn after trial that they messed with the wrong doctor. And when he prevails, it's only going to encourage whistleblowers even more. But as a lawyer who's taken these cases, I would say to whistleblowers that, to really pause. And at the end of the day, you have to follow God. Jesus says, come follow me. Just follow him to where he's leading you. Find a good lawyer, and we trust God. Fear not, for I am with you. I'm with you always. And that he has chosen you to walk through this with you for some reason. But if you do speak out and you find good counsel, you could be someone that stops this from happening to thousands of children in the hospital in which you work. And that cannot be understated. The amount of lives saved by the whistleblowers that have come to our firm alone is in the tens and hundreds of thousands. And it's a huge honor, and the fear goes away. And then you become a better person. Your heart gets bigger, and it just becomes another natural part of your life that this is something that you're doing. It doesn't take over your life. It just becomes every once in a while you get a call from a lawyer and you have a witness deposition and you take it and then you go back, you go back to your life. So,
No, it reminds me when I was in college graduating, the commencement speech was given by Mary Beth Bonacci. And I remember something she said. She said, live your life from your deathbed backwards. Meaning just imagine those last moments and imagine if you didn't blow the whistle. Imagine if you saw all this stuff happening, but you wanted to preserve the stability in your life. So you kind of kept it on the down low or found a different job. Imagine being there at your deathbed being like, oh, thank goodness I didn't speak up. Thank goodness I secured my own existence. Like that would give you such anxiety at the moment of your passing. Whereas if you were like, nope, we're going full send on this, whatever it takes, I'm going to give up myself for love of these other people. You can live with that at the end of the day. You can die with that. And so with the going back to the fraudulent stuff going on, you had given some examples of, false codes that are being used for drugs. Are they doing the same thing in terms of surgeries? Like, oh, that kid had testicular cancer, when in reality it was like an elective orchiectomy as part of a gender affirming procedure. Are they falsifying codes when it comes to the surgeries as well? And then if you are a nurse, second part of the question, or a doctor, what should you be on the lookout for in terms of where you might have a case? And I'm sure an attorney would help you to spot where you may or may not have one, or if you're not even familiar with the state's laws. I mean, some states, like you mentioned, this is illegal to do this stuff. How do I know if that's my state? And so the two questions there: one, surgically, are they falsifying the medical codes? And then what to be out the lookout if you're inside the hospital and want to know if you've got some grounds for a case?
Sure. So, yes, we have definitely seen surgeries being performed under false billing. So, excuse me. First of all, we talked about the the puberty blocker implants. That is a surgery that goes
Mhm.
into your arm, a chip. But you're talking about topside surgeries, double mastectomies, vaginoplasties, these types of things. Yes, we have one case where it was a double mastectomy on a young teenage girl, about 13 years old.
Oh,
And TRICARE wouldn't cover it. So it came back to the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, well, let's code it under a breast reduction. And so they coded it under a breast reduction. And they did the notes in the chart said that there was all tissue removed. So it wasn't a reduction, it was a full mastectomy. And the chart also revealed they did a shoulder reconstruction. So the girl's shoulders could be more masculine. And then reported in the notes that the girl liked how she looked. She looked more masculine. And so it was just a fraudulent code, for a reduction when it was really a mastectomy with other surgeries included. So we do see surgery for sure. There's a couple other codes I can talk about. One is precocious puberty. That's when you get your period, for example, really early. And so they can give you a certain amount of hormones to try to delay the onset of your period. Because again, your bones and all these different bodily systems start really coming together when you go through puberty. And if you get your period when you're 7 or 8, you might have the body and the skeletal system of like someone 4 feet tall, and that's hard for childbearing later. And there's all these things. So they can give you a certain dose of certain hormones to help block that puberty until your body's grown and you're better prepared to be childbearing. But if you see someone being diagnosed with precocious puberty as a 13 or 14 or 15-year-old, well,
yeah.
that would be a misdiagnosis. It's not precocious puberty, it's puberty, and it's natural. We also have male with estrogen deficiency or a female with testosterone deficiency. Well, males don't have estrogen and females don't have a lot of testosterone. And so whether it's deficient or not would depend on blood work and a lot of tests. And so is someone getting an estrogen or a testosterone injection, but they haven't actually done any blood work to see if there is a deficiency of any kind? A big one we see is endocrine not specified. And the endocrine system is, your thyroid and your pituitary gland and your ovaries as a woman, all the hormone systems in your body. And so they'll say there's an endocrine non-specified disorder. And so we're going to prescribe something like testosterone or a puberty blocker for that. There's also voice and resonance disorders. Like you could have a legitimate voice and resonance disorder where you would want to take some hormones to adjust. So if a boy has a very high voice or a girl you can do things to try to again, bring your body back to its natural condition. And yeah, there's also chemicals and hormones that you can look up for something like, there's something called spironolactone, and this can be prescribed to suppress the uptake of testosterone. And it's documented as an alternative to puberty blockers for men by a clinic in Boston, for example, in Massachusetts, where a lot of this is legal. So, you can look up, there's all kinds of codes. I mean, you can Google, how do I get insurance coverage for gender affirming care? And there's websites that'll tell you, here's what the code is, but if you're in a red state or if you live in, it's illegal in your state, here's what they can bill instead. As a parent, you should just call and tell them to bill this other thing.
Wow.
And so, but those are the types of things. And I'll say, the people we have working in these hospitals, they have DEI training. Often it's monthly. They're constantly being bombarded with take this survey about whether or not you can prescribe to people's pronouns, gender fluidity at the workplace. So there's just the whole culture of a lot of these major hospitals is affirming, the culture of affirmation. And it's this, the language is always very soft and sort of emotional. And like, we care deeply about the people and their feelings. And if you may have been raised to think that sex is binary, but that's not true. And gender and sex are fluid. And if someone feels that they have another sex than the one that they were assigned, quote, at birth, then we respect that here. And so here's a survey about how to treat people in a loving environment at work. And then you take a whole survey And at the end, you have to attest that this is how you will behave in a situation like that. So these nurses just know, and these doctors, like, this is the environment. And so when they see the false billing or the coding or whatever, they feel like they're in this really hostile environment and that it's treacherous for them to be, speaking up. What they should know in their heart, though, is whether or not it's legal in their state, the procedures in the first place, and know that pretty much across the country, Medicaid doesn't cover it. So if they're coding any of this to the government, that's illegal. So even if in your state it's legal to give it to a kid, it's not legal to make the government pay for it. And so just call a lawyer, look it up. You feel like the world's against you, but the law is on our side. And that's sort of in general how I feel about Americans in despair on any number of issues, is that we have nothing to despair because, first of all, we're commanded not to. It's like a deadly sin. But, we also still live in America. We still have a constitution. We still have a system of government with checks and balances and a judiciary. And in most states, all these things are totally illegal. And so you may have to defend yourself in a lawsuit, but in our system, these are easy cases. The employment cases, for example, at our law firm, when they ask for religious accommodation and don't get it, we call that the free money docket. Oh, that's your free money. I mean, this is like just totally legal. And so, be not afraid. It's not like we have to create a new country with a new constitution. No, we have one. Liberty is ours. It's like Ben Franklin said, if you can keep it. And so the way we keep it is by saying something, standing up.
And I would imagine not only is there an eternal reward to doing so, I imagine there's a financial reward for those who do so as well, where they're so concerned, hey, I might lose my $70,000 job here nursing. I would imagine, should the case be successful, they could be rewarded substantially more than they had been getting and still keep their job. Is that right?
Yeah. So under the False Claims Act, it's amazing. Every dollar that the hospital makes has to be paid back. So let's say for one child, it's an average of $500,000 to $1 million that they're making. Well, the hospital would have to pay back 3 times that. So let's say they have to pay back 1.5 to 3 million for each child. And the nurse reveals a pattern of behavior that this has been going on for 6 years to 10 years. And there's been 30,000 people. Well, that's like hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, the whistleblower themselves, because they've been willing to come forward as a witness in the case, they get up to 20% of that. And so they can take home tens of millions of dollars, depending on the size of the case. Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, there could be, if you have a good case and you've called a lawyer soon enough and you've preserved the evidence the right way. I mean, the False Claims Act is a very particular statute. You don't hire any lawyer to do that. You need experts in that area of law. Then yes, you can have a very strong case and you could absolutely be set for life.
Wow. And what was going on, if you're at liberty to discuss, at the hospital there in Texas, to give people just a general idea of what it actually looks like behind the scenes?
Yeah, so we represent 2 whistleblowers at Texas Children's Hospital, a doctor, Eithan Haim, who's one of the first whistleblowers in the U.S. on this, and who really, his courage has inspired so many other whistleblowers to come forward. And then a nurse who, after Dr. Haim had been visited by the FBI and sent a target letter by the Department of Justice that he was being investigated, she knew what he had seen was true because she worked in the clinic. And so she thought, well, if I come forward, and she said all this publicly, that they would not, they would see that he was right and they'll drop their charges. Maybe they just need someone else. So she comes forward to help him. She didn't know him personally, but she just thought, well, then FBI then comes to her house and they threaten her. And so she and he have both now come forward separately to talk about what's going on in the hospital and the types of things that they have seen. And they're very brave to tell their story. Dr. Haim was a resident. And so by the time he had blown the whistle, he was already on the way out, graduated, and had already taken a job elsewhere in Texas. And so had left the hospital. Vanessa was still a nurse there, and she had asked for religious accommodation, which they did not give. She asked to be moved. They wouldn't move her. They fired her. And so now she is looking at her options there as well. So that's the work environment at Texas Children's. Texas Children's has made a series of public statements, very public statements by the CEO himself, just to the general public through press releases. Some of them are letters to politicians and policymakers who've been inquiring into the hospital that none of this is happening. They said they weren't doing the surgeries, but they were. And that's when Dr. Haim came forward. Then they came out again saying, we're definitely not doing them. And then Vanessa comes forward and then they say again to Congress, we're not doing it. And so it's just an interesting dynamic with the hospital. The hospital's doubled down and tripled down. And I think that, only the government can prosecute the hospital at this point. And so right now the government has chosen to prosecute the whistleblower. And we'll see what happens in that case. But I think that Texas Children's Hospital has really put itself, the people that work there, its patients, in a very vulnerable position. And I think that hopefully they do some soul searching. But yeah, I don't think that that's probably a very hospitable environment to work in if you're, a Bible-believing Christian, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, God bless the people that are putting their necks out for love of these kids to actually protect them. Because I imagine it's scary because the amount of money you're coming up against with these hospitals. Because I mean, my son's got some eczema where he's a little itchy, and so we got him this cream through insurance. And I was at the pharmacy picking the thing up, and they said, "Well, okay, it's going to be $18 or whatever it is." And they also told me what the price would be if we had not had insurance for this tube, roughly the size of like a small toothpaste. It's $5,400 for this little tube of ointment, and it's just like, wow. I mean, that's nuts. I remember talking to someone in the field of transitioning, and they had gone through a lot of stuff, and they added up all their medical bills. No, I didn't speak. I read about this person, and they said their medical bills in total were more than $1 million for one person alone, from the hormones to the surgeries to the follow-up surgeries that were necessary because the first surgery didn't go so well, to the follow-up care and physical. $1 million for a single person. All that money's going somewhere. And so if someone's afraid, like, how can I possibly stand up to this Goliath? What are the specific steps that they should take after hearing this episode and hopefully being stirred up with a righteous anger of like, for love of God, somebody's got to do it. So what do they do? Okay, I heard it. I'm convicted. I need to act. What do they do? What are the steps? And most importantly, how can they get in touch with your law firm so they're not just flipping open the internet and find, okay, who's a local attorney? How can they get in touch with you? And what are the specific steps that they should take and maybe also not take? Like, don't do this, don't go, protesting your gender department tomorrow. Stay under the radar for a while. What are the specific steps? And then how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say the first step is you got to call a lawyer. Don't do anything until you talk to a lawyer. If you want to talk to someone at my law firm, just burkegroup.law is our website. Contact us, send an inquiry. Send us, we'll call you. When you talk to a lawyer, even if you're just thinking about maybe taking a case, that conversation is privileged and confidential. We could never, for example, say you call me and say this is happening at your local hospital. I could never say anything about the fact that you even called me without your permission. And so that conversation is privileged. So just know that even that too is before, let's say you decide not to go forward, you never sign an engagement letter with any law firm, that lawyer has to keep that privileged. You'd lose your license if you were to withhold any client communication, including a communication when it comes to discussing whether to hire a lawyer. So just know you're safe. You reach out and typically you have an interview with a lawyer and they learn about the case and see whether or not you have a case. And sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. And there are things you can do. And then there's definitely things to avoid doing. And so that's another big piece, Jason, you're right. You don't want people poking around in places they shouldn't be. You want people to be accessing files in a legal way. There's just lots of advice to give to people about, what they can and can't collect as information in these cases. And so you would learn about that. And then, evaluate whether you have a claim. And the process is very straightforward. You put together a lot of information. It's a lot of work for the lawyers. And then there's a process and the process gets worked out and you just work the process. You trust the process. Sometimes, I've talked to one person in a state where in their state, If you decide to go against your child's gender preference, then your child will be taken away by CPS. And so she works at a clinic. She wants to blow the whistle on a clinic for fraud, but she's worried because if she does that, her kid be taken away from her in the school. And I'm like, you need to move. You need to move to a state where your children will not be kidnapped by the government. That's my advice to you. And you'll still have a claim against that hospital, and you can be a witness and live in an adjacent state, but you need to move. I mean, sometimes, life's hard. And she's like, well, I have a beautiful view and we live on a lake. I'm like, there's lots of lakes, lady.
Yeah.
Lots of lakes, but you got one daughter. And so it's tough. It's tough. I'm not trying to demean it. So come to Texas,
Lots of lakes in Texas.
Enjoy freedom, enjoy America. But yeah, so I think that's what I would say is, you reach out, have your case evaluated, hire good lawyers that know what they're doing, who can give you examples of cases they've taken in this area. The last thing you want to do is hire a lawyer who says they can do it that can't, and they botch your case, and they didn't protect your whistleblower status, and they didn't protect your claim to actually be who gets compensated, and the whole thing doesn't work out, and you lost your job, and you see nothing for it. I mean, they need to do a good job. And so just make sure you can hire a lawyer that can tell you that they've done it before and they know how to do it. That'd be my just high level advice anytime you hire a lawyer for anything.
Now, how many other lawyers out there are actually doing this, taking on the big hospitals, representing the whistleblowers? Are there many out there?
The only law firm I know is my own. We, I think, have actually every single case right now that there is on False Claims Act in these hospitals at my law firm that I know about. We do regularly check. That isn't to say that there wouldn't be others that could do the work. But yeah, I think that right now we're the only firm that's doing it. There are other firms especially that do the malpractice we spoke about. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that is... there's someone named Jordan Campbell in Dallas, and he has built a firm just to take med mal cases, for example. Wonderful man, wonderful group. He specializes in that med mal for the detransitioners. We really specialize in the False Claims Act for the people who work inside the hospitals. But there's other people to do med mal as well. So
okay. Awesome. Well, I mean, I can't thank you enough just for your witness. I mean, the combo of your maternal heart, your extraordinary intellect, and this mother grizzly bear combination for the love of our country and the kids. It's just beautiful to see. And so I just hope that's a witness for everybody that's watching. We're going to put the link to your law firm in the show notes so that anybody listening, can tune into that. If anyone listening knows somebody who's in the hospitals working that's facing this stuff, please share this episode with them. Retweet the thing, throw it up on Instagram, Twitter, wherever. Let's get this out there because we don't need to sit around helpless as a culture of just everything's going to hell in a handbasket. It's our country too. This is our world. And so God doesn't want us to have this nihilistic attitude, because you talk about this spirit of nihilism behind this whole thing. I mean, when you were talking about just the androgynous surgeries that they're putting on these kids, the image that came to mind for me was the Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, when they depict Satan. It's an androgynous being. It's neither male nor female. The body doesn't indicate that there's any complementarity, that there's any gift of self that's oriented towards anyone else. Everything, the whole spousal of the meaning of the body have just been erased. And I think that's the end game of all this, for male and female to just be eradicated in a sense, because that is ultimate diversity. You can't get more diverse than male, female. The devil's hated it from the beginning. And this is, I think, kind of a last ditch effort he can to kind of obscure the image of God that's stamped into our bodies as male and female. So you're awesome. So thank you for coming on. And as I had mentioned at the top of the show, if you want to take our course on gender, it's coming out it's going to be at chastity.com/course. courses. It's going to be like an 8 or 10 part course teaching educators about these things. If you want a free snippet of it, we're going to have a live webinar coming up. I believe it's September 26th. You just go to chastity.com/training, and we're going to have a whole training for priests, religious, youth ministers, adults, parents, kids, anyone who wants to learn the myths about this stuff, the roots of it, and how to accompany people who experience gender dysphoria. We're going to have a training seminar just for you guys. And then lastly, as I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to support the show that we're doing, please go over to patreon.com/Jason Evert, and it'll help us to crank out more of these programs and hopefully shape the culture for the glory of God. So Marcella, you're awesome. Thank you for coming on. What a gift to have been able to meet you at the Napa conference a few weeks ago. Keep up the wonderful work. And I just ask all listeners, please pray for the work that you're doing, for the fruit, for the clients, for all protection for you and your families, and all the opposition from this side of heaven and the wrong side coming against you. Keep up the wonderful work. And Marcella, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.